Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of On the Flank. I am one of your hosts, John George, alongside Joe Kirkpatrick. Say hello, Joe.
Is this where I just go soon in the background?
Yes. I should just take the clip of a clip of the crowd saying soon and put it behind this entire podcast to make it seem like we're doing it live in front of the French crowd. But yeah, that was, speaking of the French crowd, let's just jump right into the Overwatch World Cup Paris. And honestly, my highlight of the weekend was that crowd. I loved seeing the European. I'm a huge European soccer fan. I love seeing the Europeans come out with tons of chants. They're loud the entire time. I just had the biggest smile on my face watching that France-UK game, watching any game with France in it, because this crowd was amazing. The thoughts on the crowd? Let's just talk about the crowd to start.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, 2 stages ago in LA, we talked about the crowd there. We talked about the crowd in Thailand, and to a lesser extent in Korea. But yeah, this was a crazy stage. Basically, if you go back and watch, France versus UK, very last match of the week, the entire match, I think there was just some sort of crowd noise going on. And to the point where you tuned it out and until it got turned up, at a big moment, and then you notice it again. But yeah, it was crazy. I felt like I was watching a European football match, right? Just with all this stuff going on, just the entire time. It was great. Great for the French team, I'm sure.
Yeah, when it comes to competition, those Europeans, they don't rest for a second. I don't know, when I'm watching something, I went to week 1 of Overwatch League in LA, and when I was a Houston Outlaws fan, and I can get hype when my team's winning, but when my team is not winning, I have no energy. So I don't know how it would have been if France was losing, but it feels like even when European football, when their teams are losing, they're still on their feet, just going crazy, trying to get their team back in it, which is insane. I don't understand how. I mean, even here in the Midwest in Indianapolis, I went to an Indy Fuel. I think that's Indy Fuel is hockey, isn't it? What is there?
It's hockey, yeah.
Indy 11.
Indy 11, yeah.
Went to an Indy 11 game, and their fan section is super European in that they are on their feet all the time doing chants, and they have people in the stands that lead the chants at the front, and they don't even watch the game. They're literally facing the crowd the entire game, trying to get them to start chants, which is crazy to me that they have people like that for Indy 11, which is, I don't even know if Indy 11's, it's not an MLS team. It's minor league soccer here in America. So that's crazy. God, I don't know how we got on this tangent of soccer fans, but I guess we could talk about the teams too if we wanted to here in the full European World Cup group stage. Who impressed you? Who didn't, Joe?
That's a good question, because I think it was, even though the scores came out a lot of the same way here in the Paris stage in terms of records and stuff. We had undefeated team won and last place team had no wins. But I felt like it played out a little bit closer to the Thailand group stage than the LA group stage did, just in terms of the way these teams were laid out. I think, with the possible exception of Poland, I think lots of the teams in the very middle of the pack were pretty well evenly spread out. For example, I really enjoyed, even though they placed 5th in this group stage, watching Italy play. Not the least of which is because they have, I think, probably the best battle tags in this particular group stage. Because with Hearthbeat and Dragonetti and Midna, and anyway, and Carnifex, who doesn't want to play as a character named Carnifex? Anyway, but no. Other than that, obviously France popped off every time they were playing. That was a given. That was great. And the UK, like I said, showing off what they got. I think both of us had predicted that yeah, those would be the two teams to advance out of this group stage,
Hmm.
and they definitely deserved it. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about that. Honestly, I wasn't too impressed with these teams this weekend. Um, I don't know. I think France was clearly the best team. They 4-0'd everybody except Germany somehow, 3-2. But Germany does have Nesh, who's part of the British Hurricane, and he's a very good player. I feel like Nesh should be Overwatch League for sure. I looked it up. I was like, he's clearly over 18, and he is 22, and he should definitely be in Overwatch League. He's a great player. Um, but besides that, I expected this to happen. I did. I expected France and United Kingdom. I kind of expected France to destroy United Kingdom as well. France was in the top four last year of Overwatch World Cup, and I feel like they still are. They've got some very, very good talent. Even Ben Best, their main tank. He was in EU contenders, but he's still very good tank. Same with Nico. All these players at France are just way better than United Kingdom, who's mostly made up of contenders talent. Besides Boombox, your Philadelphia Fusion man, and I honestly it was fun. It was mainly fun because the crowd made it fun. The teams wasn't too impressed with the teams overall. Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about these qualifiers here? I don't have too much to say.
I mean, we can go in and talk a little bit about BlizzCon here in a second, but yeah, I think probably France Germany that was a standout match, just because of how close it was. Germany almost pulled off the reverse sweep there in day two. And then obviously the other one to talk about, there was the last match on day three, France versus the UK, which wasn't even, well, it was kind of close, but overall it wasn't very close, which was, I think, unexpected. I think it's fair to say. I don't know if you'd agree, but at least from my perspective, I didn't expect it to be that so far one-sided for France. Um, but again, the scores, when they took it to no, they took it to hybrid. France won 5-4. They took it to escort. France won 5-3. It was close in that regard that the scores were elevated, but in terms of actual performance,
Yeah.
it was definitely a pretty big gap there.
I mean, yeah, both very. It was an offensive bout for sure. Both on Temple, Blizzard, and Route 66, they all had to go to a second round of escorting the payload again, or capturing the control point once again. So very offensive bout between the two. But overall, France was just. I mean, were not going to be beaten, especially. I don't know. Maybe it would have been closer, not in front of that French crowd. Maybe because I don't know. If you're Great Britain, you're sitting there and you just hear all these chants for the other team, and you can't hear the rest of your teammates because they're so loud. And France, of course, has the same disadvantage, but it's their crowd. I think you gain a lot more confidence when you've got like that many people cheering for you.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe if this was in England, bloody old England, would have been a different result. But overall, France just looked dominant despite the maps being pretty close overall. I still felt like France was the better team, and Great Britain was close to taking Blizzard World at Temple of Anubis, super close. But yeah, overall, France I think was the better team going in. They came out the better team. We could talk about EU contenders. The finals was also, of course, held here in the France qualifier, like it has been, like the contenders finals have been the past qualifiers. We've gotten some live action on LAN. This time it was Eagle Gaming versus the Angry Titans. Eagle Gaming ended up winning. We once again had some World Cup talent with Nico on Team France. He's also in Eagle Gaming. He took it home for the old Eagles. Yeah. Anything to say about this contenders matchup?
Not particularly. I didn't actually see it myself. But that is the last match of season 2 now.
Oh yeah.
So
And we did Angry Titans. I guess it's worth mentioning that Angry Titans has a bunch of Swedish talent on their team that we saw in the Sweden with the Sweden World Cup team. Unfortunately, they could not pull it out though. But yeah, Contender Season 2. It's all that was the last finals right there. We move on to Season 3, which got announced. It's happening in November. We don't know exact dates yet. But immediately after this ended, the Contenders Twitter said, "Hey, we'll be back in November," which we were talking about before this. It's crazy how quickly they're bringing these seasons back. It's like they want the minor league scene and the amateur players to just keep playing to keep them interested in Overwatch, because I do feel like the pros like need a break, but I feel like if the amateurs get a break, they're gonna realize like, maybe I should move on to like a different game, because they're gonna have a big break, and they're like, I need to be doing something, because the amateurs, they're not making the big bills, they're not able to feed their families if they don't have this prize money. So I like the decision to keep it going.
the other way you can think about it, I guess, is just that they want to keep that cycle going to particularly 4 times in the year like this, where there's lots of these teams, changing up their rosters, that sort of thing. That to have contenders going a lot, to have lots of contenders data, can only help these tier 2 professionals as they're looking to expand their career and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, and especially because open division teams join contenders every single year. Um, so they want to keep that or every single season rather. They want to keep that open division going because that's the bottom tier of the amateur scene. And in order to do that, you're gonna have to have contender seasons pretty often. I mean, we live in a fast-paced world right now, so if you're just taking a break on the amateur scene for a little bit, people are going to lose interest in it and move on to a different game that has a better amateur scene, so, or a more consistent amateur scene. I know in real sports there are tons more breaks, but I mean, you don't have amateur scenes competing with baseball or anything like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, as far as that's what we got as far as contenders goes. Let's do a little. We'll go more in depth on the World Cup BlizzCon top 8, the final 8. We'll go a little more in depth once we get to a week before it happens. Of course, it happens November 2nd. That's when BlizzCon is. So we've got a good month and like a month and a week here. So we'll do our quick reactions to the draw, and because we did get the draw right after. I was excited that it was right after this year. We had to wait like a good amount of time after the qualifiers happened to get the draw going last year. But we got the draw this time. We got a bracket to look over. Let's do a short little dive into that. Let me get your reactions. First matchup. France versus Canada. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, France v Canada is hard for me personally to judge because of the way we saw things go down in the U.S. group stage. Obviously, U.S. and Canada coming out of that stage with the U.S. beating Canada, not quite soundly, but pretty well. And obviously, we know that's a good team, though. And so the same thing, sort of between France and the UK, that France definitely won that matchup pretty dominantly when it came head to head. So yeah, but as far as trying to apply those group stages together, obviously that's the problem of all of these matchups. But perhaps it depends heavily on. Well, it'll probably depend on the kind of patch, even that they're playing a month from now. But I might give the edge, based on what we saw this last weekend, to France.
Yeah, I right now I'm seeing on Reddit on all these places. I think the Canada fans are underestimating France right now. Canada has a lot of talent, but France does too. And France was there last year in the semifinals, losing to South Korea and giving them giving them a big challenge there, giving the South Koreans a big challenge. So I would not underestimate this French team if I were Canada, that's for sure. I honestly will. Once we get a week away, I'll probably know this better. But right now, after I don't, I'm probably riding the hype train of that crowd. But I feel like France is the better team. But I guess we'll see. We have China versus Finland over on this side of the bracket. People are calling it the side of death. Last year we had a side of death as well that had United States, South Korea, France, and China all on it, and it was just that those four teams were arguably the best four teams in the entire top eight. So everyone was like, "Why?" But this side is, I'd say, this side is a lot better than the other side because the other side has UK and Australia, who I think are a clear 7 and 8 to me. But China and Finland, these two teams are another two good teams. China looked very good in their qualifier last year and ended up losing in the first round. Do you think Finland can end China's undefeated run so far in this World Cup?
I would say no on that. I mean, we saw, obviously, for me, it came out of sort of out of left field for you, maybe less so based on last year's World Cup. But China just absolutely dominating in their group stage. Obviously, we did say that was one of the weaker ones, just in terms of the pool that was going on there. But then again, we saw, Finland and Russia pretty tight in the South Korea group stage as well. So yeah, I think it might again picking the first seed here give a slight edge to China in that matchup.
Yeah. I don't know. This I honestly don't know who's gonna win this game. Um, they're both super good. Everyone's super high on Finland after their very close matchup against South Korea in their qualifier. I'm still not as high on Finland. I feel like South Korea just isn't as good as people think they are, really. I think people have been competing with the NYXL roster and all these players on South Korea for a while now. And I think people are just looking back. They're too narrow-sighted on the World Cup in general, and they're looking back to last year's World Cup and saying, "Oh, the South Korea team was dominant there. Like, why aren't they dominant like now? Other teams must be better." But honestly, I think that South Korea is down a level a little bit, especially with this NYXL roster who ended the season pretty poorly and did not look as good with the Met shift, with especially once Brigida was added to the game. So these might not be the best players South Korea could put out on that stage right now either.
Yeah, we saw in the United States that lots of these, particularly in the United States, but in these last couple stages as well, that lots of these teams that can pull off but more variety, a larger variety of compositions without having to fall back, like especially as we saw in this European group stage, to lots of that 3-3 play, are definitely going to get pretty far. And I'm not sure that Finland has quite the resources available to make that sort of variety of compositions work as well as a team like China.
Yeah, it's all about not only being able to run Goats comp in that 3-3 super well, but it's about being able to counter it super well and having that Doomfist Sombra player. In Finland, who would their Doomfist Sombra players even be, really? They are very overall. Finland has Fraggy and Zappas, and they've overall historically been a super tanky unit. So they do like Goats a lot, I feel like, but I don't know about countering it. As far as I mean, I guarantee the announcers are going to mention something about this matchup, a Revolutionary War rematch or whatever, United States versus UK. I think United States should take this one easily. I honestly, in my opinion, UK is the worst team in the top 8.
I'd certainly agree with. You said, yeah, UK, Australia 7 and 8. I don't know about the order, but I think the numbers are definitely accurate. We saw the US and Canada just in a league of their own there, almost playing a entirely different meta game in the stage that they had. Um, the, yeah, it's that was pretty well decided, I think.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, Styles.
And I'm just happy for the first time in World Cup history. This is the third year of the World Cup. The United States doesn't have to play South Korea in the quarterfinals, and we might make it to the semifinals.
There you go.
This is amazing. We do have to, if we move on, we probably will be playing South Korea in the semifinals, but it's a step up, you know. Making the semifinals, that's pretty big. But yeah, the last matchup, of course, South Korea, Australia. I think this one will also be a beatdown. This side of the bracket is all about United States, South Korea, in my opinion. Any possible chance for an upset here? The Aussies.
I don't think so. No. When we talk about U.S. South Korea, that's gonna be a different thing. But yeah, certainly these quarterfinal rounds are gonna in that half are gonna go up um, pretty pretty prescribed.
Yeah, I'm excited to look at that in more depth. Talk to you more about that. For some reason, I have been signed out of my Google Tabs sheet here. What's happening? All right, let's move on to the news though. The news. We've got once again this week not too much concrete news. A lot of rumors from Mykl. It seems like it's gonna be a little bit till we get some concrete news. Mykl and his AMA said that these teams will probably announce their entire rosters together rather than just announcing one by one players they pick up. But we start with a non-player piece of news here that is official. And there's a bunch of unofficial rumors behind this official thing. But Harsha, I believe he's some sort of coach or just an analyst for the San Francisco Shock. He unfortunately left the San Francisco Shock to pursue other opportunities, and he's looking for a new team for coaching positions in season 2. Of course, there's a lot more behind this. There's rumors that Kate Mitchell, the GM of the Washington D.C. Overwatch League team, told Harsha that he could have a coaching position at DC, and it ended up not working out. Of course, there's more story behind that, where according to Kate Mitchell in her in some Discord chat, Kate Mitchell mentioned that she was getting less funds. She ended up getting less funds than she was getting at first to sign coaches and players. So some promises she made ended up having to go back on those promises because she did not have as much money as she originally thought she was going to. Wow, lots to unpack there. Let's just start simple. What do you think about Harsha leaving the Shock?
Well, I mean, Shock was a team we saw kind of a rough start there at the beginning of the season, but was able to turn it around by the end. Pick up some good talent there mid-season, and it had a decent closeout. And obviously now lots of Shock players playing the World Cup. And yes, I'm sure Harsha had a decent amount to do with that. I know they got a new coach. Was it Krusty that went to Shock?
It was the Boston Uprising guy.
Yeah, and so, but my point was going to be that probably that coaching change also had a good effect on that team. But yeah, from what I know of Harsha, I'm pretty sure he was a pretty valuable coach to them. So yeah, this is probably a loss that they'll be feeling. Hopefully, they can get replaced. But in the meantime, should be a good pickup as well for some other team.
Yeah, Krusty was the coach. But yeah, Harsha. I was lucky enough to meet Harsha when I was in Los Angeles last year, back before Overwatch League was even a thing. And yeah, he's an amazing analyst, amazing coach. Back in those times, he was just a journalist type. analyst who was making YouTube videos, and now he's here in the Overwatch League, and he's super dedicated and he's a great guy. But
What
overall,
immediate
what?
what immediately comes to mind when I think of Harsha was that one time in like stage 2 when everyone changed their profile picture to a picture of Harsha for like a week.
Oh, yeah, I do
I
remember that.
I forget why that happened, but that happened.
Yeah, I can't remember either, but I do remember that happening. Um, yeah, overall, he's even if this DC thing doesn't work out, I think Harsh is gonna find somebody somewhere. He's a good analyst. He's hardworking, and he's been in the Overwatch scene since it began. So, I don't expect him to be teamless by when this season starts. We move on to some contenders news, Fusion University news, specifically Fusion signing Elk. Mykl said that this is a Mykl tweet. Mykl said that unknown whether or not they're signing him to trade him in the end. But overall, he's a top talent, and whether or not they trade him or not, I think he could possibly have a place in the Philadelphia Fusion starting lineup. Of course, he would. Neptuno is the person starting in his position right now. Philadelphia Fusion. What do you think Philly Fusion's gonna do with Elk? You're of course a Fusion fan. What do you want them
Yeah.
to do with Elk?
Yeah, this was something I called, a couple weeks ago, I think, when we were talking about Team Spain in the World Cup and Neptuno obviously not participating because he was complaining of burnout from stage 1. So, yeah, one of the things I suggested was, yeah, Fusion should go ahead and sign Elk from Fusion University, pull him up, put him in his support rotation. Looks like hopefully that's what's going to go ahead and happen. I think that would be probably the best thing for them. And on our notes page here for this episode, I put in parentheses basically confirmed because then BLT, Will Tucker, his Twitter handle is BLT, who is the I think owner or general manager or something of Philadelphia Fusion. He actually replied to this tweet. He says, "You really think we'd sign a top prospect just to trade him?" And Mykl says, "I don't know, would you?" And Tucker says, "Nah." So yeah, it's I'm pretty confident in that assessment that the Elk will definitely be a feature on the 12-man Fusion roster season 2, which is definitely good for them. I'm a fan of that. He'll certainly see more playtime than Joe Meister or Dayfly did.
Oh yeah, for sure. He's great. I mean, you can argue the entire roster of Fusion University is absolutely great. So I expect them to sign more of those of age players very soon. Philadelphia Fusion has. I mean, they've gotta make some use of this amazing contenders team that they have, right? Let's move on to some more expansion player news. Gushue, of course, everyone's new favorite Winston guy from the old China team, the China World Cup team. Gushue, he's rumored to go to Hangzhou, the Hangzhou Owl team, and the Hangzhou Owl team had a lot of rumors going on. It looks like they're putting together a pretty good squad here. Mykl had some more gossip going on the competitive Overwatch subreddit, saying that they also signed Godsby, No Smite, Bebe, and Rhea, who are all part of X6 Gaming, which is Contenders Korea. And then Bazzi, Adora, and Revenge from Seven, which is I believe Seven's also Contenders Korea. But yeah, it's looking like Hangzhou is putting together a real squad here, with one piece of Chinese talent. What do you think about this signing?
It's a good choice. I mean, lots of these expansion teams, we can't say much about them, because there's only one at this point actually confirmed expansion signing that we've heard so far, which is of course Janice for Washington D.C. But yeah, other than to say to some of these rumors, good choice. I'm a fan of that. I'm not a fan of that. There's not tons we can do to evaluate these kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, we have no clue if this is true or not, but you'd sure hope so if you're a Hangzhou fan, because these are some good players. X6 and 7, X6 and 7. I just realized how weird it is that they sign players from X6 and 7, all these numbers. But yeah, they're good. They've got some good Korean players on those two teams. They didn't finish like top of the Korean contenders table this past season, so that's a little bit confusing. But in season one, X6 finished top though, so I mean they've had a history of being good. Overall, I think Hangzhou we might have a good Chinese team if this rumored team is correct, and they even have one Chinese player, so that's pretty cool.
We better have a good Chinese team. That's all I can say.
I mean, yeah. It seems like most of these Chinese. I think I read another rumor. I don't know if this was from Mykl or from Benchmob. I can't remember. It was one of them that only one of the Chinese team is going for a full Chinese roster, which is good. But hopefully, it's looking like that Chinese roster might not get the best Chinese players, because it seems like all of the best players are just being picked out one by one and put on, like one's being put on Hangzhou, and it seems like most of these teams are reaching out to just grab one of those really good players. So we'll see what happens there. As far as player trades, we had a nice little trade that everyone expected. Dante over to the Houston Outlaws, traded for Smurf, who the Houston Outlaws picked up from their GG EA Academy team, just to trade for Dante. So San Francisco Shock get a nice little tank prospect in here, young tank player Smurf, and Houston Outlaws get what they needed, a tracer player in Dante. Good trade for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about San Francisco Shock with 4 or more DPS players. I think we said it was going to either be Baby Bay or Dante heading out. So that's another prediction we called. But also, I think that's definitely going to be good. Good for both teams as they're looking in towards season 2.
Oh yeah, this is as a Houston Outlaws fan, I love this. I love it a lot. And if you're a San Francisco Shock fan, I know Dante is. A lot of people consider him the most improved player over season 1, and you're kind of sad that you've lost Dante, but you still got a lot of really good DPS, a lot of pure DPS talent on San Francisco Shock, so you should not be upset at all. They're gonna have to trade one of those players, and they'd be stupid if they kept 5, because a good majority of their DPS players who deserve to be on teams are just not getting any playtime. Some more contenders news. Another contenders pickup, Hagopin from Mayhem Academy up to the normal main roster of the Florida Mayhem. I think everyone expected this to happen as well. Hagopin, of course, was in Owl Season 1 for a bit there, and he's a good player. So, especially when you compare him to the rest of the Florida Mayhem roster and how little players they have right now, too.
Yeah, for those of you keeping track at home, they're up to 5 now. They're actually signed 4 of whom are Korean.
Just one more. They need one more player for a starting roster.
and probably, honestly, they need to replace Tavik, but that's different.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe Florida will go with the 6-man roster once again to start the season off. One of the worst decisions ever made in Overwatch League. So Shanghai Dragons have begun their rebuilding process. They signed their new coach, Blue Haas, who knows? Could be any of those. But yeah, new head coach, Shanghai Dragons, rebuilding. I don't know too much about this guy, but as long as he's new, I'm good with it for now.
Yeah, that was pretty much my feelings too when I heard about all that.
Yeah. And something you predicted, another piece of news, you totally called it. That's what it says on the rundown. Joe Meister going for a coaching role, and he's looking for a team. Unfortunate that team was was not is not Philadelphia Fusion, eh? He's got to look for a new team for this coaching role.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know, but yeah, he did decide that yeah, he's after being released by the Fusion, he's shifted into coaching. Um, which, to be fair, that was something I mentioned, casually. I think when we were talking about uh, like Grim Reality or something, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. But yeah, it's good for him. Obviously, wants to be involved in the league. I think he's look at me saying this, but I think he's fairly old too, in terms of
Yeah,
being an esports player.
compared to most esports players, yes, he's pretty old.
Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense. Obviously, like I said, definitely wants to stay involved. And he's definitely got the skills to be sharing. So yeah, he's retired as a player. Going now to start being a coach.
Yeah. I expected that, honestly. Joe Meister, he's been there since the beginning, but he is a bit older, and he just doesn't have the pure talent that he needs to be in the league, honestly. So expected over here. Before we get to this last piece of news, something that isn't on the rundown that I think is super important that I forgot to put on it. Runaway. The rumors about Runaway. Of course, Runaway, the recent Contenders Korea winners and a very historic Korean team that everybody loves. They're rumored to be the most expensive team on the market right now to buy out if you're one of those new Overwatch League teams. And the big rumor, I think this was a couple of days ago, is that the Vancouver team is the lucky team to sign the entire roster of Runaway. I think there was a rumor of them needing to be bought out for like millions of dollars.
Yeah, I saw this like just before we started recording. Yeah, it was $3 million for the entire roster, which which worked out to like 375K per player.
Yeah, which is insane. But it's looking like Vancouver is that lucky team. Vancouver's about to become a new fan favorite, which I don't think anyone expected a Vancouver team in the first place. And now they're about to become a fan favorite. Does Vancouver win the off season if they sign Runaway, Joe?
I'd be really close. I mean, I don't think we can call that yet until we actually hear from some of these other teams. But yeah, if we just call them Busan instead of Vancouver, I think that would just be the best thing for everyone.
Yeah, they should embrace it. Call themselves the Vancouver Busans.
There we go.
Yeah, but honestly, if Vancouver does sign Runaway, I'm going to become a big fan of Vancouver real quick, which I didn't expect myself to say when they announced Vancouver was a team. That's exactly what they need. As far as this isn't a signing, it doesn't have anything. Valiant and Shock, they're putting on a nice little event. I know when the Overwatch League was first announced, they announced during the off season that each team would be allowed to put on a nice little tournament or event in their areas. And Valiant and Shock are taking up that opportunity for the California Cup. They're doing some nice little exhibition matches, one on October 20th in Santa Ana and one on November 10th in Oakland, which is right next to San Francisco. But so that's a nice little fun event. You gonna go, Joe?
Yeah, I doubt it. Being in Indiana and all that, but yeah, no, it's a great idea. Building up through the off season. Obviously, preseason will start in probably late November, early December, I think, of this year for season 2. So it's great to keep that going. And that's the way they talked about it in their press release too. That this is essentially just to maintain the California rivalry. And notably, obviously, LA Gladiators are not included in this pair. I think probably the main reason for that, it wasn't a snub or anything. I think just the Gladiators aren't quite ready for some of this off-season play. Looking at their roster right now, currently only at 6 players and without a main tank. So I think that probably has more to do with their exclusion than any snub by one of the other 2 California teams. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. They've talked about they're gonna have a little trophy that they pass around based on the winners of each match, and again continuing even into Overwatch League Season 2. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Yeah, I always felt like whenever from the beginning of the season, the casters hyped San Francisco versus the LA Valiant up more than the San Francisco versus the LA Gladiators matchups, which is weird to me. They would always like call the Valiant Shock like matchup like the battle, like California battle, like LA versus San Francisco. And like the Gladiators are also from LA, but they would never mention that, and it would be less of a rivalry for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, for some reason, this is built out to be a rivalry, and Gladiators Shock have not been built out to be a rivalry. This is cool. I wish I was in California because I would totally go to a nice little event like this. It'd be a lot of fun, and it's cool that they're not only that they're doing it near Los Angeles and San Francisco, because obviously everything is happening in Los Angeles right now. So it's cool that they're doing something in Oakland. Yeah, I would totally go to this. Let's move on to topics now that we're done with news for the day. Joe, you've put a nice little our competitive Overwatch write up here about the Mercy rework. Of course, 4 days ago was the 1 year anniversary of the Mercy rework, where they changed her resurrection to an E ability, and you can only resurrect one. And they added Valkyrie, her new ultimate, into the game, and it's been a hell of a ride ever since. Joe, you want to dive deeper into this one?
Yeah, I mean, you can, for those of you who are interested, you can go in onto Reddit. Again, posted on September 20th. A big, long write-up entitled "On the 1 year anniversary of Mercy Rework, a record of what happened during 325 days to balance the most popular hero of Overwatch." And yeah, there's just entries, every day, even from the first news we had of the Mercy rework, all the way to all the changes. Back when Valkyrie had 2 more bonus resurrections that were instant, and also you got a speed boost, and also you got a damage boost, and all the way down to what it is today. With still the slow res and still the actually including the most recent Mercy nerfs in the support balance patch that brought the healing down to 50 health per second. Yeah, I primarily wanted to mention this last line here. It says after the patch, referring to this support balance patch, Mercy is effectively no longer a must-pick in competitive mode, and her win rate quickly dropped to one of the lowest in mid to higher ranks. Meanwhile, Ana's win rate sees a dramatic increase in Masters and GM. And so my sort of question here on our notes page was state of supports in competitive Overwatch. Because again, thinking back to last year, particularly Overwatch League Season 1, that Mercy was just required. That even to the fact I seem to recall some matches that were lost Overwatch League Stage 1 specifically because the one team was not running a Mercy, and there were no other things you could have attributed to it but that. Obviously, that's what they want to avoid with some of these balance changes. But yeah, after a year of iterating, some people think it should have been a lot quicker. Some people think they're not. Some people think they're not done. But I think we're at an okay place now. Certainly, we've seen in the Pro Overwatch we've been able to watch, a huge variety of supports. Back to sort of almost like the support pairs that we see with tanks. We see Winston D.Va, we see Ryan Zarya, we see Orisa Hog, and sort of similar to that. Lots of times we see Moira Lucio, and we see Mercy Zen, and we see Rick Ana. That seems to be at least sort of the way the meta is sitting right now, which I think is a pretty good thing as far as that goes.
Oh yeah, you always want balance in the meta. I mean, I'm surprised it took them. It's cool to look at something like this because it really puts in perspective how long it took them to nerf Mercy in order to make her like not a must play. An entire year. That's so crazy. That's just so crazy, and it also makes you more thankful for this meta right now, like you're saying, because there are a lot of people complaining like, oh, goats is too good, and all this stuff is happening, and I'm honestly super thankful to see something like goats or see something new, because they're not goats still isn't like a required composition. There are times in the meta, like you're saying, Overwatch League Stage 1, where if you don't have a Mercy, you lose, which is even more ridiculous to me. You can counter goats, you can play a different composition from goats and still win. It's not required. There's always something to complain about. Someone will always complain about something. But it's threads like these that make you realize, hey, maybe I shouldn't be complaining. Mercy was once a must pick. And I think she was at the beginning of the game, she was still pretty must pick, but once Ana came in, she was not as must pick, and back in the day it was all about speed boosts and Lucios. And I mean, this game is, I think someone also posted on Reddit just like a whole history of like everyone's nerfs and buffs, like in one little graph, and all the metas in history of Overwatch. And I loved looking at that, because you can really remember like periods of Overwatch and competitive Overwatch and Overwatch League based on the meta they were in. And like, which it's fun to look back and say, oh, that was the most fun meta to watch, and like, oh, that meta sucked. So I have a question for you. What's your favorite meta in Overwatch history?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is, it's hard because we talked about on this before. I've only played almost a year now.
Yeah.
So obviously the game's been out for going on 3. But yeah, so maybe what I haven't seen, just because it seems so foreign to me, trying to watch something like Beyblade, I think would just, and obviously I can go back and look at it, it's on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
But that seems very foreign to me. With playing on a Reaper pretty regularly, that's we haven't seen very much like that since. But as far as stuff I have seen. I'm trying to think. It honestly, it might be, but other than right now, because again, I think the more varied the meta is, the better. And these last couple patches, I think, have brought us really close to that. With the possible exception of goats, of course. But other than that, might be some of the experimentation that went on, like stage 2 or stage 3. Of the Overwatch League, as Mercy was falling away, and as teams were coming up with better and better answers to dive that weren't dive.
Yeah.
We saw lots of, for example, I think of the Horizon defense that was standard there in the middle of the season, with Orisa, Hog, Junkrat, and Widow right there up on the high ground. That just couldn't be dived because of all the CC that was going on,
Yeah.
and all the protection that happened. It was that kind of. Granted, it was a pretty rigid, pretty rigid structure for a dive at the time, but to see that kind of ingenuity, as much as there could have been some there, that was cool to see also.
Yeah. Right now I like the meta a lot, and I enjoy watching the meta right now a lot, actually. I think there's still some things that could be changed, like Brigitte needs to be a little bit harder to play, possibly, and not as easy to just counter dive with. If it was a little more skilled, it would be a little more impressive. But I like, ever since the addition of Brigitte, the game has not been as dive oriented, and dive has been a strong composition, like, for, I feel like ever since the game came out, dive has just been a super strong composition. So adding someone like Brigitte to counter dive was, I think, super refreshing, and it was awesome to see stage 4 in the playoffs. things besides dive. But I also really enjoyed when dive was first getting popularized with Miro on South Korea, just showing everyone how Winston is should be played. Like he just taught everyone how Winston should be played in dive, and I think that was a super exciting meta to watch. And watching dive versus something with a Reinhardt Zarya comp go head to head was really fun in that time too. And seeing Kaiser against Miro. I know Kaiser is like not in the scene whatsoever anymore, but Kaiser used to be a very good Reinhardt player, and Miro was considered the best Winston player back in the day. And it would be Lunatic High, Miro's team versus Runaway, Kaiser's team, and they would just be going head to head on Reinhardt or Winston, and it would be so much fun to watch those tank battles go head to head. But I also miss a time where McCree and Soldier and all these hit scan besides Widow were good as well. And I hope they add another hit scan character into the game come BlizzCon. I think the game needs it pretty badly. I was thinking about it, and Sombra, Doomfist are the two DPS heroes they've added since release, and they're both not hit scan. They're both more projectile or like ability based heroes rather than primary fire based heroes like Soldier, McCree, Widow. So I think it's about time we add another hit scan into the game. But yeah, whew, I mean, we could talk about meta for days. We did get that developer update, which is a nice little transition. Speaking of meta and reworks, we did get that developer update, and it was about the Torb changes, and the delaying of social features, but mainly about Torbjorn changes. Which I can't. Last week we were debating what it was going to be, and I can't believe I completely forgot that Jeff Kaplan hinted at these, because I definitely would have predicted it. So Torbjorn, you want to go into read off the changes for me, Joe?
Yeah. First, I do want to touch the other things pointed out there in the developer update. Like a couple details. Obviously, PTR update. We'll get into that. They talked about the Halloween event is coming back. Halloween Terror. It will be pretty much the same as it's been the last few years. And Jeff's comment on that was that the dev team has been spending a lot of effort here recently, working very much on balance and hero changes in order to work on the game itself primarily, rather than working on, for example, new holiday events or new holiday game modes, that sort of thing. And so that's why we're seeing Halloween Terror again. That's why we're seeing Jugendsai's Revenge again, which makes sense. If the trade-off there is to have a support patch like we had this last time, that completely shakes stuff up, I'm a fan of that. Also, there are new colorblind features on the PTR, so you can go check those out. Really customizable, as well as this third mystery social feature in addition to LFG and endorsements that was talked about way back at the beginning of the year, that will have to be delayed till at least 2019. So we don't know what it is yet, but that's what was mentioned there.
Yep.
But then, yes, we do have this new PTR patch.
Oh boy. But yeah, I do agree with you. If they're going to put the game itself over events, I believe they should do that. Overall events being not as much in the long run. But hopefully once they get the game all sorted out, they can give us some pretty cool skins and new events. All right, PTR patch. Let's do it.
Yeah. It's big.
It's a big one. Lots of stuff in here.
Are you doing it or am I doing it?
You can do it. You're the PTR man. Do it.
Here we go. PTR patch September 21st. That was last Friday. That's when this finally came out. Colorblind stuff. We talked about that. That's super customizable now. They said they're still iterating on that even, based on work with. Is one of the lead developers is actually colorblind, so they're still making changes to that. But from what I hear, that's really good. Visuals for shields and barriers got changed. It's super cool if you can envision Symmetra's new ultimate, her barrier field that has this big glowy hexagon pattern on it. That's what all of the shields look like now. And I guess I say all. And what I mean is Orissa's shield and Briggs' shield and Winston's bubble,
And Ryan's shield?
because we don't know what Ryan's shield looks like because
Oh.
Ryan is disabled on the PTR, which is not on this list of changes, I don't think, but it's kind of a mystery because we don't know why.
Huh.
Presumably they're working on Shatter stuff that they couldn't get fixed in time. Because they're always working on Shatter stuff. But yeah, Ryan is disabled on PTR, but presumably his shield will be shiny and hexagony as well. We got a Brig nerf, because we've had a Brig nerf like every single patch since she came out. Her health of her shield is now down to 500 from 600. So that's a thing. We got a McCree buff. I think we mentioned last week there were going to be a few small changes to heroes. This was one of them. His combat roll now has a cooldown of 6 seconds as opposed to 8. So that's nice, I guess. I don't know what it does. It doesn't change his usage much. But if you are playing,
I guess.
Yeah, if you are playing McCree, you'll feel that benefit. Farah had a bit of a rework, and it's not definitely as extensive as Symmetra or Torb. But her concussive blast cooldown is now 9 seconds instead of 12, so a slight bit of a buff there. But then her rocket launcher got some changes, and there's a lot of technical details. But essentially, what happens is that the rocket launcher will now do less splash damage and a little bit more direct hit damage. Works out for approximately the same DPS, but what essentially that means is that you're rewarded more for being a good aim on Farah now, which is kind of what they did, if you recall, sometime in the summer when they, or no, actually that was back in the late spring, I think, when they changed Junkrat, made his increased his mine fall off a little bit, made his primary fire a little bit smaller. It's the same sort of thing. Farah and Junkrat are pretty similar heroes in terms of their usage in competitive Overwatch. Lots of spam, lots of chip damage. And so this is you can sort of think of the Farah changes in terms of that Junkrat change. But yeah, so that good aim is more important now. The knockback is reduced a little bit, as is the splash damage. Jeff talked about it in terms of making her more of a high skill hero. I suppose that can be the case. I don't know. That's a thing to think about.
Yeah. She's still she's a very hard hero to play in general, anyways.
Yeah. There's lots of things you have to be thinking about, even with only 3 abilities or whatever.
Yeah, mainly because she's just very easily counterable. So
yeah, that too. That hopefully the concussive blast buff, that'll help a little bit with mobility, which is actually really important on Farah. Even though obviously she can fly around in the air, but that's actually a pretty exposed position, like you're talking about. So
yeah.
So like I said, I don't know. Sort of with McCree, I don't know if that'll change much about the play style we see from Farah, but hopefully that'll help.
Yeah.
Especially good Farah players to continue to do well.
I'm not sure if this is true, but Siegel was talking about this like it was a nerf, and was saying that direct impact damage is not changing because when you direct hit someone, you get direct hit damage and splash damage. I'm not sure if that's true.
I don't know.
But if that is true, then the nerf to splash damage and the buff to direct damage would do nothing, I guess, because it would add up to the same thing if it's true that the direct hit and splash damage combine together when you direct hit somebody.
That sounds right, because yeah, it's 120 damage for a direct hit. It used to be 80 on the explosion or the splash damage, if you want to think about it that way, and 40 from the impact. Now it's up to a max of 65 splash damage and 55 for the impact. So yeah, that still adds up to 120 damage if you get hit with a direct rocket.
Yeah.
But more of that is from the hit as opposed to from the splash damage.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't change too much, except she just doesn't do as much splash damage now, I guess.
Yeah, need a little bit more aim. But
yeah.
it should work out. We've got May. Nothing was changed for May, but her abilities have some updated visual effects. So that's kind of cool. Her primary fire is more rigid, I guess, is a way of thinking about it. Where before her freeze beam was very wispy and you couldn't quite tell where you were aiming at any point in time. It's almost like it's coming out of her gun with more force now, so you can more clearly see what exactly is being frozen, as well as her ultimate now actually has a visual effect um, that makes a dome or a sphere, depending on where you place it, around the range of the ult. So again, you can be able to see exactly what's being frozen, which is super helpful. Oftentimes, you would be, for example, a Valking Mercy, and you would get caught in the range of this blizzard because you couldn't exactly see how high up it went. Excuse me. Now it's very clear, uh, so that's helpful for trying to play against Mei,
Yeah, all
if nothing
this.
else.
If you haven't seen it, all this stuff looks very good. I like it.
Orisa, got to change to her primary fire, reducing the spread a little bit. It feels nice. I can't tell you much other than that. There's not much you can really notice. But it does feel nice. Because they talked about the projectile travel time made things weird when you're trying to track targets over a long distance, uh, which I could agree with. So yeah, it feels a little bit better. That's about all I can say about that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Orisa. Soldier, sort of the same thing that his spread now begins later. Used to be, you'd only make 4 shots or something, and then his weapon begins to have spread, and so you would do lots of shooting in bursts. So now um, the max spread has been essentially pushed later from 6 shots to 9 shots now. So now it's 5 or 6 shots before even spread happens, I believe, which is cool. Again, that's helping you over long distances. A pretty slight buff to Soldier, but I mean, from a character that doesn't get tons of use, we'll take it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Give me some more Soldier and McCree buffs, please.
Torb is next on the list, but we'll come back to him because I did want to mention hero bug fixes. Obviously, that's fine. Some custom game bug fixes, but I think sort of the sleeper change in this patch is that they reduced the setup timer for assault, escort, and hybrid maps from 1 minute to 45 seconds.
I love it.
Yeah. So you want to talk about it first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think in the back of my head, playing Control was always more fun because of how quick it was, and you got like that 30-second setup timer. It's probably 45, I guess, there too. And I mean, Control, I feel like subconsciously was one of my favorites because of how like quick you just got into the game. But yeah, I'll take assault, escort, all these. I'll take a quicker setup timer here. I always felt like it was too long. I always find myself like browsing Twitter or something while I wait for the game to get set up. Like we don't need that much time to set up.
Yeah, I think it'll certainly change things like, well, for example, Butler Overwatch played last night in a TESPA tournament, and I was listening in on their comms as they were preparing. And if you're ever in a situation where you're not sure what kind of comp you want to run on defense, for example, you need to be a lot more decisive about that now. For example, think about the defender's walk from spawn to King's Row first. It's a pretty decent trek. That'll take you 20, 25 seconds. If you're playing a character like Orisa, who then also has to climb up to high ground.
Yeah,
But in most cases, that probably won't affect much other than speeding your games. But that is worth thinking about. As you're moving into a competitive setting, just in that you get a little bit less time to try to make those kinds of swaps. Or like, for example, Anubis first defense. Oftentimes, earlier in the Overwatch League Season 1, teams would often run a Mei initially as they walked out of the defender spawn to try to raise Orisa a couple of low mobility heroes to that high ground right above the point, um, and then go back into spawn and swap to something else and then come out. In the Overwatch World Cup, we actually saw that once or twice with a Symmetra now who can just teleport them up a little bit quicker. But things like that, might also be affected a little bit by these changes. Just have that much less time to try to make that swap efficiently. Uh,
I wonder if
I haven't actually tried it myself, but teams might actually have to practice that.
yeah,
Make sure they can get it done in the time.
wonder if they're trying to remove the team's ability to do that or anything.
Oh,
But
yeah, I don't
yeah,
know.
Butler's gonna have to start prepping before the maps. It looks like here.
Yeah, it'll work out. We're taking this preseason to see exactly what's going on.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, good, good. Big change. Torb.
oh yeah, we got Torb.
This is
Uh,
huge.
okay, so Torb, first got a slight buff. His head hitbox is a little bit smaller now, so that's cool because of all the other things that he's doing now. Uh, so his gun got a little bit of a change. Primary fire, which is the little tiny ball, the little ball of molten metal, I guess, is a little bit faster now, so that's cool. That it'll be a little bit easier to try to lead, and the reload is a little bit faster, so that's cool. Alternate fire, the recovery time between shots has been lowered, although his damage also has been lowered to keep DPS approximately the same. Reload time now also has been reduced to match that of the primary fire. And the spread, with the spread fixes that came in, I think in the patch before this, I think have also now applied to Torbjorn to make that a little bit reliable. So his gun is a little bit faster now, a little bit more comparable with the primary fire and secondary fire, kind of in the same way that Roadhog is now with his fall off. The fall off range now is the same for primary and secondary fire. So that's helpful. I think just for consistency's sake. He still has his hammer. The range on his hammer has been increased a little bit, so you can now hit people with a hammer as far away as you can punch them. I'm actually not. I'd have to be interested to look up and see what damage the hammer does, whether it's actually worth hitting people with the hammer or just punching them. But obviously that's not what the hammer's primary intent was. On live Torbjorn, the hammer is there so you can upgrade the turret. But of course now on PTR Torbjorn that is no longer the case. Your turret is still on shift, but you can throw it. Actually, you can throw it a pretty good distance, and it'll automatically build to what is normally what you would consider a level 2 turret. There is only one turret level now, so all turrets operate at 250 health as a level 2 turret. It's got essentially a 15-second cooldown. You can destroy it manually. You can throw it out. The people you primary fire at will automatically be targeted by the turret, which is cool. That it's no longer just gonna hit whatever the heck it wants. Whatever enters its line of sight first, you could direct it. So that's nice. And you can throw it out when you're about to die, and it will actually continue to build itself and be useful, which is kind of cool. The turret's nice. It's a lot more significant. You have to be more. You have to be more invested in your turret placement now, as on the PTR with Torbjorn, because of the longer cooldown and because of the way because you can't destroy it all the time. If it's actively firing, you have to wait like 3 seconds before you can destroy it. If it's taking damage, you have to wait like 3 seconds before you can destroy it. So it's really an investment. It's going to be harder to find, forward locations to put it. Gain some early ult charge and then set up a turret behind a point. That used to be a thing. That might not be so easy to do now. I don't play Torb enough to say that it's going to be impossible, but that might not be so easy to do now. With the turret, you got anything on the turret?
Turret. I like this change. I don't know. Overall, the turret On PC, obviously the turret is it's super easy to destroy if you have some teamwork. If you have a Reinhardt shield in front of you, him being able to throw it wherever he wants is pretty good. And having level one was just, I don't know. There was no point of even trying to build a level one turret if you were in danger and all this stuff. And Jeff clearly said that they wanted to make him not just a situational defensive hero, and doing this makes him not a situational defensive hero because he can just throw the turret out wherever he wants, and he doesn't have to set it up behind a shield or all this other stuff like he does on defense usually.
Yeah, you don't have to babysit it anymore.
Exactly, and it reminds me a lot of the Symmetra turret changes too, because of course she was able to throw her turrets now instead of having to place them one by one. And overall, I still think this is not going to be too strong though. I don't think this is the strongest ability for sure. Especially because he has like a 10-second cooldown when it's destroyed in combat. I think that's the big part of this is if the opponents destroy your turret, like you're just you have no turret for 10 seconds. And I still moving it down to 250 health as well is just it's very easy to destroy right now. But 250 health is even easier. So I still don't think this is the strongest ability or rework. But I think this next ability you're going to be talking about is his strongest. So why don't you go ahead and talk about it?
Yeah. So on live, currently Torbjorn's E is the armor pack, throw out to allies. But the developer comments here is that tended to be a very the phrase they used was a feast or famine ability, which makes sense, right? When you're playing Torb and you're winning, there's lots of armor or there's lots of scrap sitting around on the ground. You can go pick it up, generate lots of armor, and help your team resist more attacks, right? Kill the opponent more, you get more scrap, all of that. But then as a trade-off, when you were losing, you hardly had any armor to give, and that was just essentially a wasted ability that didn't give you any benefit. So the new ability, they really wanted to preserve the animations, I guess, from Torbjorn's current molten core, and so you press E and you actually transform, just like the current Torb does, and you get all shiny and fiery. But it's lasts for 5 seconds on a 12-second cooldown, and it gives you 150 extra armor, and increases your damage, movement, or no, so that's attack speed. Sorry, attack speed, movement speed, and reload speed by 30% each. So this is a sort of survival ability, in addition to an initiation type of thing. My only thing about Overload, like you said, it probably is going to be pretty decently powerful for a Torb who's able to use it properly. My only thing is I wish it was a little bit more creative. I mean, somebody's comment, I forget where I heard it, was that there's only so much you can say about an ability that is just press this button to be better at everything.
Yeah.
If that's the only complaint, then I think they did okay. But yeah, what are you going to say about Overload?
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that last comment. Press a button to be better at everything is kind of just boring in general. There are a bunch of like League of Legends characters and like MOBA characters because they have so many characters in their game that just their abilities are just get better at everything for a small amount of time. It's just like, oh, okay. And there's no skill in that, and I liked Overwatch because they didn't have something like that for most people. For Torb, that was his ultimate ability. But it seems like with these reworks, they're really obsessed with like with taking that ultimate and moving it to an ability. And I think with this one, it's obviously it lasts a lot. It's not as long as the ultimate ability is. That's the one like nerf kind of it. But with Mercy, they moved her ultimate to the E and changed it a little bit. With Symmetra, they moved her teleporter to the E and changed it a little bit. And now they're doing the same with Torbjorn, and I do think this is his strongest ability now. And I think it's a very good survival ability, like you were saying. Like you get down to And ooh, as someone facing a Torbjorn, that's gonna annoy me so much. As like a diva or something, like almost killing him, and then he gains 150 armor all of a sudden, I'm just gonna be like, oh my god, it's gonna be infuriating. I think it's really gonna be used as a survival tactic a lot, as well as an engage tool. But yeah, I think this is the strongest ability by far.
Yeah. I guess we haven't finished Torb, have we? Because then obviously we got a new ultimate, right?
Yeah,
Still Molten Core, just because that's cool to shout.
yeah,
Uh, but in this case, it kind of reminds me of Hammond's ultimate, actually. But he can shoot out of his left arm with a little claw. Um, this describes it as 10 molten globules that create damage pools where they land for 10 seconds, which is actually like molten lava that you can throw onto the ground, which will deal 130 damage. This says, I don't think that's damage per second. Well, no, it's definitely not damage per second. But it's essentially an AoE damage over time for enemies who are walking through it. So again, an area denial type ultimate. But it's actually more effective against enemies who currently have armor.
yep,
So obviously that includes Bastion, Brigitte, Diva, Orisa, Reinhardt, Torb, Winston, and Wrecking Ball. But of course, also every other hero who is on a team with Brigitte, right, who can give armor to her teammates, both through her E and through her ult.
yep.
That it'll do almost 50% more damage to armored targets.
Yeah. So I mean, if you look at these armored targets you just listed off, they're all pretty powerful characters in the game. So it seems like their main goal with this was to get an ability that counters armor because I don't think there's like any is there any other ability that counters armor in this game?
Um, Other than abilities that don't not counter armor. I mean,
Yeah.
no, we think about like Winston's Tesla cannon is bad against armor,
Yeah.
and we say, like Junkrat mines are good against armor, but only because they have the minimum damage reduction.
Yeah.
But no, in this case, this is actually something that has damage increased versus armor.
Yep. First time they're doing that. And yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, it looks a lot like reminds me of Portal. It reminds me of like the paint glob stuff in Portal too.
Or Splatoon. I've seen that
Oh
a
yeah,
lot.
Splatoon as well. Overwatch is becoming Splatoon. I love that game, but yeah, I like this a lot. This is a nice skilled ability. You place it where you need to place it on the payload, where
Place a
where
portal.
place portal wherever you need. Um, but
I
yeah,
wonder if you can shoot the. You probably can't shoot it through a Symmetra teleporter, but that'd be kind of cool.
that would be very cool. Then it would be full portal. That would be amazing. Yeah, but I saw someone. It has a very like long range too. If you aim it into the sky and like forward, it has a pretty long range. So you could just like shoot someone with it
and
from a
it'll
distance.
and it'll bounce off walls too. It'll only deploy on the ground.
Yeah,
So
I like this. I like this ultimate. My only complaint is they just moved his ult to his E, but overall this ultimate is great. Torbjorn needs a change. I think he was at low ranks one of the best heroes, and at high ranks the worst hero, which is
yeah,
crazy. And they changed him in a way that is not going to hurt console players either, because back when I was on console at the beginning, Torbjorn was the most overpowered hero in this game. Especially when you could have 6 Torbjorns, you just lost. There was no coming back from that. It was over. But yeah, overall, you got any last thoughts on this Torbjorn change?
I don't think so. No, other than asking the question, will this actually increase his competitive use or not? And I mean, I guess out of the two, maybe three heroes that see the least play in the Overwatch League, Bastion, or sorry, no, May, Torb Symmetra, maybe throw Bastion in there too. I think probably Torbjorn is not the least used. That definitely goes to Symmetra. So we've seen some niche Symmetra change now or some niche Symmetra use now in high level competitive Overwatch. Hopefully, we'll be able to see comparatively a little bit more. Still probably niche Torbjorn use in competitive Overwatch.
Yeah.
So
I think he'll be played more than the Symmetra rework.
yeah.
I think it's a little better than the Symmetra rework for sure, but I still don't think he's going to be. I don't think he'll be overpowered or anything like that. But yeah, that's all. That's all we got for you guys this week here on the Flank. You can follow us on social media, our personal accounts. Mine is JWGeorgeIV. Joe's is Kirkpatrick_Inc. INC. And our show has a Twitter. It's at On the Flank Show. Email us any topics you want us to talk about or any questions you have, and we will discuss it here on the show. Our email is ontheflankshow@gmail.com. Of course, you found us in some way, and you're listening to us somehow. But if you want to find a different way to listen to us, you can go to ontheflank.podbean.com, my YouTube channel, which is linked to my Twitter, iTunes, which is my personal favorite way to listen. And we are officially on Spotify now, so you can, if you're a Spotify user, we are on Spotify. Yeah, that's all we got for this week. Thanks for joining me, Joe, and we'll see everybody next week. Soon.
Oh, you must really like me.